Good evening, and welcome to the second night of our 4-week series, Accent on Advent, brought to you by Centenary United Methodist Church in Morristown, Tennessee. I'm Ginger Isom, the pastor. Tonight we welcome again harpist Kelly Shipe, who will be delighting us with music as she plays a couple of our Advent hymns. We'll also be joined by another guest that I will introduce in a bit. What do you do when you have company coming to your house? I'm sure you're like me. You spend the time before they arrive cleaning the house, sweeping the floor, vacuuming the carpets, mopping, making sure the counters in the kitchen are cleared off, putting fresh linens on the bed, fresh towels in the bathroom. You might go to Walmart or to a drugstore to buy sample sizes of shampoo and body wash to put in their bathroom. You go to the grocery store to gather some of their most favorite food items and even their favorite beverages. You do everything you can to make them feel like they are at home when they are in your home. You prepare your home for your guest. Tonight we're talking about preparing a home. But we're not talking about preparing a home made out of bricks and mortar or wood. We're talking about preparing the home of our heart. In our hymnal, there is a hymn that speaks about preparation during the Advent season. It's one of my favorite hymns, but it's one that we hardly ever hear or sing. It's called People Look East, and it was written by Eleanor Farjeon, a British writer. You may know her best from another song that she wrote and was made popular by singer Cat Stevens in the early 70s. She is the one that wrote Morning Has Broken. But Dr. Michael Hahn, Professor Emeritus of Church Music Director at Perkins School of Theology, tells us in his article on umcdiscipleship.org that Farjeon was also a prolific writer of children's literature, both poetry and stories. And it was her children's literature that endeared her to her British audience. The article goes on to tell us that in 1928, the Advent hymn, People Look East, appeared in the Oxford Book of Carols. The tune was a traditional French tune to which Farjeon had written lyrics, first noted as being written anonymously. The hymn is festive, and I must admit that when I sing it or hear it, especially that first verse, I can't help but get a mental picture of Downton Abbey era servants dancing about as if in a musical, preparing the home for a very special guest. People look east, the time is near, of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able, trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today, love the guest is on the way. Dr. Hahn fleshes out the hymn in the article saying, key images of the season are abundant. People look east is the direction of the rising sun, and in the history of Christianity, the direction of the coming Messiah. In stanza 2, the bare earth is waiting for the seed that will flourish in the reign of the promised one. In stanza 3, the stars that guided the Magi shaped the bowl of the heavens, giving signs of hope beyond the frosty weather. The angel's song in stanza 4 sets every peak and valley humming, an oblique reference to Isaiah 40, verse 4, every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill brought low. The end of each stanza announces that love is coming. Love is coming, but in different forms. The guest, the rose, the bird, the star, the Lord. And so during Advent, we make our homes ready to receive this very special guest. In other words, we prepare our hearts to receive the coming of the Messiah, Emmanuel, God made flesh, God with us, love incarnate. To help us understand the importance of Advent as a time of spiritual preparation, of making our hearts ready, we are joined tonight by Renni Morris via Zoom. Renni is a certified spiritual director serving on staff as the Director of Spiritual Formation at First Farragut United Methodist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. Renni also serves as the director of the Holston Conference's 5-day Academy for Spiritual Formation, a week-long event offered in cooperation with the Upper Room. To welcome Renni, let's listen as Kelly plays People Look East. Renni, welcome. It's good to have you with us this evening.
Thank you.
We're just going to kind of dig right in and explore this topic of spirituality and the season of Advent. Many of us, this time between Christmas, it's a hurried time. I'm sure you're not any different than the rest of us. With all of the decorating and gift buying, and if it were a normal year, partying, we're not doing many parties this year. By the time Christmas arrives, we're exhausted. Can an Advent observance help us slow down? And if so, how have you experienced that in your life?
Well, it can absolutely help us slow down. I grew up in a denomination that didn't observe Advent as Methodist, United Methodists do. So I'm grateful that we take this time to honor, a time to wait, to prepare, to slow down. With the pandemic, it's been so different. And I'm looking for the gifts that we can find in this unhurried time. And so, yes, I think it's so important for us to just say it's a very different year. Advent's a different time, so I'm going to honor it. Instead of running and scurrying and doing all these things, I'm going to put my lights out and I'm going to look at them. I'm going to light a candle. I'm going to really honor these evenings at home and these slower times and think about what Christmas is about, because Advent is that waiting for the coming of it, not rushing straight to it, not cutting to the chase.
Why do you think we rush towards Christmas?
I think we get excited about giving gifts and receiving gifts. I think we normally have so many programs at school, at church, in the community, and there's just a lot going on that we don't want to miss. And so I think we want to zoom through all of that and just go straight to Christmas and not think about, well, I shouldn't be singing about Christ's birth yet. I should be singing about waiting and that he's coming. Oh, come, Emmanuel. But we just don't do that. We're a culture that wants to rush through things.
We are, aren't we? We really are. How does Advent prepare us spiritually for a more authentic celebration of Christmas and Christ?
In some ways, it should be like Lent.
Okay.
Because it's a time that is set aside that's not part of our regular church year. It's a special time of the church year. And so it should prepare us because we do things that we normally would not do. Mm-hmm. We try to think about things we normally don't think of. And so it should start to do a little work in our heart that's going to make us see the world differently.
Okay. In spiritual formation, and I really gained an appreciation for this in the academy, we talk about an emphasis on rhythm. Can you help us understand this concept of rhythm and why it is important to us in our spiritual growth?
Well, these colors are not very vibrant, but if you look, you can see that this is a circle representing eternity, and this is representing also the church year, and most of it is an aqua green color. It's not a very bright green. That's a time where we're just rocking along, doing our thing. We're going to church. We're still reading our Bibles regularly. We're praying. We're doing all these things. But if you look, there's some purple in there, and those are for Easter, for Lent, and for Advent. We've got Christmas. We've got Pentecost time and Easter in here. Those are times we need to get out of rhythm.
Okay.
We need to say, I need to stop what I normally do and take up something different.
Okay, so it's almost like this time is a syncopation in our regular rhythm.
Yes, if you're a musician, you need to be syncopated right now in the way you're playing your life.
All right, that's an interesting perspective. I would not have thought about it that way. So what is its relationship then to the seasons of the church year? And you kind of explained that, but is there a rhythm to Advent itself? And if so, what is that rhythm?
Well, we're thinking about different things each week. We're thinking about hope, or we're thinking about peace. On that third Sunday of Advent, we start to think about joy, and then we think about love. Those rhythms in life are different. Mm-hmm. And so you may even approach each week saying, what do I need to learn this week about hope? Where do I need to offer hope? What do I need to learn about it? And so those are different ways, even within Advent, to have a rhythm that's a little different, or a focus, or whatever you want to call it, to help you remember we're going through phases of waiting.
Okay.
We're going through this anticipation, and it's going to change.
Okay. How does this rhythm overall help us on a day-to-day basis in our daily lives?
Well, I'm really grateful that most of the church calendar's that green rhythm that is just very steady. Mm-hmm. Because we need that in the day in and day out ordinary things. We need to remember that God's present to us in nature as the leaves just changed for fall. Yes. And that's a rhythm that is steady every year that we need to embrace. But we need to be willing, like Elvis would have said, to be all shook up.
Okay.
And let Advent be a time to sort of shake us up, or let Lent be a time to shake us up out of the rhythm. Okay. Then we know we can go back into that, and that God's going to keep showing up every day. Okay. And we're going to have surprises along the way.
And in some ways, I guess that shakeup is to kind of jar us so that we become attentive to what is around us, because you see things when in the ordinary time, we go through the same kind of routine and motions, the same rhythm. And in doing that, we can easily go through like we have blinders on and not see what's around us. It becomes almost rote.
Yes. And when we're in ordinary time, or in a time of pandemic like this, it's important for us to remember it's not always going to be the way it is today.
Yeah. Yeah.
God has so much more in store for us, and I need to be adjusting and joining him in it and being ready for whatever he has up his sleeve. Okay.
So Advent really kind of teaches us to be more flexible.
Yes.
And pliable and moldable. Okay. All right. That's a good perspective there. As a pastor, I realize the importance of Advent, but I have wondered, with the pandemic and the racial and political tension that we have experienced this year, do you feel like it may be even more important for us to fully embrace the observance of Advent this year, not only in corporate worship, but in our personal worship as well?
I think we should. I don't know anyone right now who is not feeling the stress of this pandemic. Everyone I talk to is fatigued right now. Mm-hmm. We're still worrying about the uncertainty of how things are going to unfold over the next few months, and we have some fears. And so I think it's especially important at times like that to pull back mm-hmm. and to practice a little bit of silence. Don't be afraid of that, and just say, Lord, I need a word from you. It may not be a literal word that I'm going to hear by any means, but I need to hear from you in Scripture. I need to hear from you when I pray. I need to hear from you when I'm interacting with other people. Guide us, be with us, be Emmanuel, be God with us, mm-hmm. and help us to not be fearful. And help us to just know you've got this, Lord, and we're just going to go with you into whatever's coming ahead of us. Mm-hmm. But I think especially this year, people are longing for that, and that's why I'm seeing so much more online, and I think churches are taking Advent more seriously this year.
Yeah. We certainly are. We certainly are. You mentioned that not to be afraid of silence. And I know as a spiritual director, I'm sure you run into people who feel like silence is wasted time, but also it is a frightening time. What is it about silence that scares us so?
I think for me, when I started 15, 16 years ago practicing silence, I was so afraid I might actually hear from God. Mm-hmm. What if I'd practiced it and I got a word and I didn't like it? Wow. Or it called me to stretch or be different from the way I was today. What I learned just by embracing that practice is that you will come out of it renewed. You may not hear anything. You may not have an idea. You may even doze off for a minute. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. What you're doing is just saying, Lord, here I am. I want to hear from you. I want to be with you. Yeah. Renew me, make me ready. And it's a good thing. But it is frightening in the beginning, so we start really small.
Yeah.
Start with 1 minute.
Yes. I had an experience with a children's sermon when I was talking about contemplative prayer with kids. Imagine that. But one little girl, she was probably 6 or 7 at the time. I said, do you have any idea what that is? And she said, yes. She says, it's when you go outside and you just get really quiet, and then you hear God speak to you in your heart.
Yes. And it reorients us.
Yes, it does. It really does. In addition to the lighting of the Advent wreath, which many of us do in church and some families do at home as well, are there some practices that you would recommend to someone wanting to fully embrace the Advent experience this year, both for individuals, but also for families, maybe families that have children?
Well, I have several nativities in my house, and I don't have any children in my life but I put my nativities out. I put everybody in the nativity scene, but a lot of people say, we're going to wait and put baby Jesus in there on Christmas Eve. Uh-huh. We're going to wait and bring the wise men after we've celebrated Christmas Day to remember Epiphany and when the wise men came. Mm-hmm. So we can put things in each room that remind us of God, that remind us of Jesus. But having the light of Christ in your house when you've got your candles lit, or like I have these lights on the mantle. I do one of my mantles just with birds and really natural things to remember that God is very present in creation. Yeah. So there are lots of things we can do like that in our homes. Still put Santa out. If you like the Grinch, put the Grinch out. But talk with children but the whole point of it is not Santa or the Grinch. It's Jesus. Yeah. And this is what we're celebrating. Yeah. At our church, we did some Adventure boxes that were for Advent alone, and we made them available to children and to adults. And they have one weekly activity, and I have to double check my list. The first week was an Advent wreath, so they made those this past week. They have an ornament to color so that they can put it on the tree, and it's about Christ. They have a card that they can send to someone. And then the fourth week, they have a cake mix and some icing, and they're going to bake a cake and have a party for Jesus.
Oh, cool.
We can do simple things. If you're baking cookies for someone, think about why. We're remembering the gifts the wise men brought. We're remembering the gift of Jesus.
Wow.
Think about the purpose that we've lost behind so many of the things we do.
Okay, good. People are always looking for new ways to observe holidays, because sometimes we get into that routine of something and it kind of loses its meaning. So to have suggestions of new ways to practice is
well. And this year too, we're reminding people it's not Christmas till Christmas Day,
yes.
And so we're going to remember those 12 days after too.
Yes,
and celebrate that until January 6th.
Yes, I mentioned last week in our series that observing Advent has helped me to appreciate the 12 days of Christmas.
Yes.
And so then to honor that and to celebrate an Epiphany, which we typically recognize as the day of the wise men coming to see not baby Jesus, but toddler Jesus.
Yeah. An accelerated 12 days.
Yes, exactly. As a spiritual director, if there is one thing that you want people to take away from an intentional Advent, what would it be? If you want them to come away this year with something that they've not had before because they intentionally celebrated Advent, what would it be?
It is okay to slow down. Everything you want to do does not have to be done today. Some of the things we think matter really don't. So pick and choose. Think about what activities do honor Christ more. How can I better love God? How can I better love my neighbor? Am I so busy worrying about purchasing perfect gifts that I forget to love and to just be really present to someone, really pay attention? We have so many discouraged people right now, and it's so much more important to be there for them than to be out scurrying and doing.
Yes, exactly.
So I would just encourage people, don't be afraid to slow down. Really embrace this Advent season and the waiting. It's not passive to wait. Be actively waiting to share God's love that way.
I pointed out last week, too, that we've been in this pandemic since March, and here we are in December, 9 months, which is
a birth.
Pregnancy. Exactly. And so, you think about that whole time of pregnancy is waiting, and not, you can't hurry a pregnancy along. And so we can move this along as well.
And we can get really anxious in the waiting.
Yeah.
And we can want to rush through it. And so let's just give it the time and the energy it needs.
Exactly.
And God will meet us in that. Yeah. He'll show up for us there.
Yeah. I think it's exciting. I saw last night the news that Jupiter, if they said Jupiter and Mars, whatever the two planets are that are going to be coming together on the winter solstice, but just how much we need that sign of hope, that extra brightness in the sky. It's not going to look like what we've seen in the pictures they're posting, but just to know that that's happening this year when we need that sign of hope the most. Is exciting. So, yeah.
And to share that word of hope and encouragement with other people, that's just something that can't be bought.
Exactly. Thank you for being with us this evening, and just pray that you have a continued blessed Advent season and Christmas, your 12 days of Christmas and Epiphany, and both with you and your family, and also you and First Farragut United Methodist Church. So thank you for being with us. And we look forward to maybe talking to you again in the future.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Merry Christmas early. Happy Advent for many more days.
Thank you.
We are grateful to Renni for helping us consider how we can prepare our homes, the home of our hearts and our minds, for the coming of Christ at Christmas as we journey through the Advent season. As we prepare, we also pray. We pray for the coming of Christ. We pray, "Come, thou long expected Jesus." Kelly, thank you for the beautiful playing of this hymn that is familiar to most of us. Though John Wesley was revered as the founder of Methodism, it was his brother Charles who gave us a tremendous wealth of music and theology in hymns. Though both brothers wrote hymns, Charles is said to have written over 6,000 hymns in his lifetime. To put that in perspective, if he wrote one hymn per day, it would have taken him over 16 years to write 6,000 hymns. That speaks to how important he believed music was, not only to worship, but also to grounding the people called Methodist in good theology. Many hymnals, including our United Methodist hymnal, contain 2 hymns from Charles Wesley related to the seasons of Advent and Christmas. We have Charles to thank for one of our most beloved Christmas hymns, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. But he also wrote one of our most cherished Advent hymns, which has been the hymn Kelly has played for our opening each Sunday night, Come Thou Long Expected Jesus. Dr. Michael Hahn, mentioned earlier this evening, tells us in the article on this hymn found on umcdiscipleship.org that the hymn was actually published in an American hymnal before it was ever published in Wesley's homeland of England. Although its lilting tune is not as severe as that of O Come, Emmanuel, this hymn is in much the same way a prayer, specifically a prayer of supplication or petition, in which the one praying is asking for something specific from God. Hahn says, Wesley succeeds in recalling the deep longing of ancient Israel for the Messiah, the promised one. Hahn points out an interesting technique that Wesley used, and that was the repetition of the word born, which is used 4 times. He says, each time born is sung, an aspect of Jesus' mission to a troubled world is revealed. Born to set thy people free, born thy people to deliver, born a child and yet a king, born to reign in us forever. The article also references an observance by British hymnologist J.R. Watson that the hymn clearly connects the Messiah prophesied in the Old Testament to the birth narrative of Jesus, specifically in Matthew 2:6 in reference to Jesus as born a king. Furthermore, Wesley picks up on the themes of hope and strength and consolation the Messiah was prophesied to be as being manifested in the Christ child. Wesley is emphasizing that this child, whose birth is told about in the Gospels, is the fulfillment of the prophecies about the long-awaited Messiah. Hahn closes the article by saying, although we live in a different time than Charles Wesley, the longings of people's hearts are just as deep. We long for security, love, relationships, meaning. To those who open themselves up to its message, this hymn identifies with that longing at the deepest levels of our existence. Where there is no longing, there can be little meaning. Hope is central to the Christian experience. And where will our longing, our hopeful waiting lead us? Where is the ultimate home of our hope? In the final line, Wesley takes us there. Raise us to thy glorious throne. I'm glad you were with us this evening. And as we continue in our Advent journey, we wait, we hope, we prepare. Join us again next week as we continue in our conversations about Advent. Next week, we will also have with us the Reverend Mark Flynn, who will be talking with us about the scriptures of Advent, particularly the prophetic writings. Again, Kelly Shipe will be with us to delight us with her gift of music in the playing of Advent hymns. May you have a blessed week this week as you watch, you wait, you hope, you prepare. Amen.